Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakal Kadash, double honor to all the apostles, a great millstone that taught me this truth, and blessings all you Akim out there pushing this truth in all sincerity and faith and honesty. Before I begin this lesson, I'd like to thank Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, for giving me the spirit to do another video. Alright, I'm that fellow servant Kanakala coming at you once again from GMS St. Petersburg, Florida. And the Lord blessed me here with a little finding. As you can see, post-production, history channel, history.com. This is popped up November 13, 2018, so this is recently. Alright, it says first wrecked slave ship discovery yields brutal details. And it's called it's spelled Saojose. Alright, so I'm going to butcher this, but it's Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but it's Saojose. That's how I believe it's pronounced. I don't know, but it says near Cape Town in 1794, killing over 200 people. So this is the first wrecked slave ship discovery yields brutal details. It says a small 340-ton San Jose Paquete de Africa set out from Mozambique in December 1794. Even though the ship was no more than 100, so that was a misprint here. Even though the ship was no more than 130 feet, so even though the ship was no more than 130 feet long and probably closer to 100, the crew had packed 543 captive people aboard. So it says even though the ship was only 130 feet long, it says closer to 100 feet, they packed 543 people on aboard. And that's you so-called Negroes. Are you Negroes, West Indians, and you Haitians? Okay, you will be considered the Jews, the true Jews, Judah. All right, you were the three tribes left in Jerusalem during the time of the Messiah. And it goes to show you how the white man handled you, or handle product as you were, or handle stock, livestock, because that's all you so-called Negroes were to the so-called white man known as the Edomites in the Bible, Esau. So it was the ship was close to 100 feet, but he still packed 543 captive people. So the motive was pack as many as possible, because some are going to die on the way over. So the more we pack, the better chances are, probability. If I stack 543, right, more than half of that is going to die. So if you use the pack 200, it was all about profit. So the more I pack, the more casualties I can afford to lose. The more I can afford to lose, because I have so much more. But if I pack little, some die, then I won't end up with as much slaves coming over to the land that they so desired to sell the so-called Negroes to. So overall, the estimation 21 million Negroes were stolen from the west coast of Africa, from Africa in general. 21 million Negroes, and only like I said, this is roughly estimated, only 11 million in total made it over. All right, so there goes to show you the conditions of these ships, packed like sardines for 3 weeks or more at a time, not eating, not drinking. All right, and if you did eat, they threw slop at the bottom of the ship. All right, and sprayed and threw buckets of water down. So the conditions were very, very harsh, man. Imagine being. Shoot, you can't even lay in your bed comfortably by yourself for 3 weeks without wanting to get up. But those were the conditions. Okay, it says the crew shackled them in place to prevent them from taking over the ship before it landed in Brazil. Alright, it says where they planned to sell them in Portuguese colonies, thriving slave trade. And estimation 45% of the slave trade went to Brazil. Alright, it says the crew knew a certain number of people are probably going to die on the voyage, and to make it profitable, they need as many people as possible, says Jacob Bischoff, a maritime archaeologist at the Ezekiel Museum in Cape Town and co-founder of the Slave Wreck Projects. People would literally have been squeezed up against one another. And post-production, I'll have some diagrams on there to show you the conditions, man. All right. He says the British eventually started chasing slave ships in the 19th century, and they mentioned that you could smell them a couple of miles away from the stench of these poor people being squished up together. And if you go into details, which this article doesn't, they were urinating, defecating on one another, throwing up, plain terms, throwing up, shitting on each other in a confined space. So what really how most of the slaves died was the bacteria, all right, the conditions on the ship. Now note, it said that the crew knew a certain number were probably going to die on the voyage. So they were sitting next to dead people. And when you die, that's a lot of bacteria. Your body releases these toxic gases. It smells very bad. That's why they clean out your insides, all right, and stick embalming fluid inside of your body to pretty much to defend against that smell and that decay, all right, that rotten flesh. So imagine. The British say they were able to smell the ships from a mile away. That's how stink the ships were. From people being so close together, people dead. Someone's dead laying right next to you. You know what kind of bacteria? That's why majority of the slaves died, man, due to the conditions on the ships. It says you could smell them a couple of miles away from the stench of these poor people being squished up together. But the ship never made it to Brazil. On December 27th, the São Jose became stuck between two reefs in Cape Town's Camps Bay. There the ship broke to pieces, killing 212 of the captive people who spent the last 3.5 weeks in chains. So that's just saying how much time they spent in chains, shackled up next to each other. Now, if this ship went wreck, imagine how long. I forget the exact time period, but I remember reading over some documentaries. I remember the elders went through it as well. It was like 3 months, man. Okay, it says that left 331 survivors, whom the crew sold to white farmers in South Africa, which was the under Dutch rule. After that, the ship remained lost at the bottom of the ocean until the 2015, when researchers with the Slave Wrecks Project announced they'd identified it. And it's just a little thing. It says, read more. The last slave ship survivor gave an interview in the 1930s. It just surfaced. It says underwater archaeology researchers on the site. All right, they're looking at the remains. Okay, and it says the São Jose is likely the first discovered slave shipwreck that went down with captive people aboard, preserving pieces of shackles and barrels and possibly biological clues about the people. It's like about the people died and where they came from. And the work's not over yet. Researchers with the Slave Wrecks Project are still analyzing its remains. Alright, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna see if there's anything on this article here. It says the last slave ship survivor gave an interview in the 1930s, just surfaced. Alright, it says roughly 60 years after the abolition of slavery, anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston made an incredible connection. She located the last surviving captive of the last slave ship to bring Africans to the United States. And those Africans, they were Negroes, right? They were Hebrew Israelites. They were not Africans. It says Hurston, a known figure of the Harlem Renaissance, who would later write the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God, conducted interviews with the survivor but struggled to publish them as a book in the early 1930s. In fact, they are only now being released to the public in the book. Alright, Hurston books tell the story of Cudjoe Lewis, who was born in what is now the West African country in Benin. All right, and as you can see, it says West African country, Benin, and those were a majority of the Israelites flew. The Jews flew in 70 A.D. Vespasian Titus, his son Titus, put an end to the Jewish state. All right, and the Jews fled into Africa. That's how so-called Negroes got into Africa. Okay, it says and took him to coast. It's like originally named Kosula. He was only 19 years old when members of the neighboring Domian tribe captured him and took him to the coast. There, and he about 120 others were sold into slavery and crammed onto the Clotilda, which is probably the name of the ship, the last slave ship to reach the continental United States. The Clotilda brought its captives to Alabama in 1860, just a year before the outbreak of the Civil War. Even though the slavery was legal at the time in the U.S., the international slave trade was not, and hadn't been for over 50 years. Along with many European nations, the U.S. had outlawed the practice in 1807, but Lewis' journey is an example of how slave traders went around the law to continue bringing over human cargo. So even after so-called slaves were abolished, you still had these devils, these Edomites, still bringing slaves from Africa over here to the United States. And if you really look into it, the Jim Crow laws, okay, the slaves actually still suffered, if not just as much post slavery. Okay, so like they like to tell you slavery was abolished, but slaves suffered just as much after slavery. All right, I believe that's the Jim Crow laws, if I'm not mistaken. All right, it says Jim Crow laws were state local laws that enforced racial segregation in the southern United States, enacted in the late 19th and early 20th century. Okay. All right, and we watched for white people only. All right, certain places, Negroes, they wasn't even allowed to work. All right, so it was hard for them to find work. So what happened was they pretty much had to work for free. All right, they couldn't find employment. It was very hard for them. And then even once the if you really go into it, the so-called white man would loan them tools, agriculture tools such as shovels and hammers and so on and so forth. They would have to pay to rent those, and then they wasn't making enough money. So all in all, though, they became, for lack of a better term, indentured servants. They owed a debt, so they had to pay and work off the debt. So literally, the slavery never didn't end when it was so-called abolished in 1807, as they state. All right, it says to avoid detection, Lewis' captors snuck him and other survivors into the Alabama at night and made them hide in a swamp for several days. To hide the evidence of their crime, the 86-foot sailboat was then set ablaze on the banks of the Mobile Tinsel Delta. Its remains may have been uncovered in January 2018. So they're still finding remains of these ships all the way up until today. This is dirt on American history here. All right, and I'm just going to get into some precepts, and after that I'm just going to branch off here. This is first scripture I'm getting, Ezekiel 39 verse 23. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel, which you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and also you confusion of faces that may look like the other nations, but indeed are Israelites. Your line goes back to so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, just to name a few, so-called Irish, Italians, so on and so forth. Certain inhabitants of Europe, because the Moors, ruled in Europe for a certain amount of years. They ruled in Europe, so they planted their seeds there. All right, from even going as far as the Vietnam War, when the so-called Negroes and Latinos, Native Americans went to that war, they planted their seed over there. So there's Israelites scattered all abroad, no matter what you may look like. If your line goes back to the children of Israel, you are indeed an Israelite. Okay. It says, and the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me. Therefore I hid my face from them. So, you know, now the nations know, man, because we have woken up to who we are, and we know that the Heavenly Father, all right, was behind it all. And it says, and who gave them into the hand of their enemies, so they fell all by the sword, and gave us to the hands of the so-called white men and other nations where we were scattered to. It says, according to their uncleanness and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. So the Lord hid his face from us, from disobeying his laws and statutes, commandments. All right, read about that in Deuteronomy 28th chapter. All right, 1 through 15 are the blessings, and 15 on down to 68 are the curses that befell upon us because of our uncleanness and our transgressions. It says, therefore, thus said the Lord God, now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and I will be jealous for my holy name. All right, so he's going to bring again our captivity. He's going to bring us out of captivity. All right. It says, after that they shall have borne their shame and all their trespasses whereby they have trespassed against me, and we're born in it. And when they dwelt safely in the land, and none made them afraid. When I have brought them again from the people, and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and sanctified them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am the Lord their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen. But I gathered them into their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Okay, so the Lord is, this is a prophecy. The Lord is going to gather us from these lands that he scattered us through due to the transatlantic slave trade. All right, you can see those arrows, they went to all parts of the world. So the Lord is going to gather us up. Last scripture I'm going to get is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. And it reads, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again. That word Egypt is, in the Hebrew, is Matazarium. And as it means double straits. And straits mean a difficult time. So the Lord said he's going to bring us into a double difficult time. So imagine difficulty, but double it. And that's what we went through. You know, 3 weeks to 3 months into a slave ship, dying, using the bathroom on each other. You know, those are difficult times, man. Only the strong made the complete voyage over to where they had to be delivered to. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into a difficult time again, meaning slavery, with ships. All right. And that's how we came over to America, in the ships. And these articles prove that. It says, by the way thereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you or save you. And we were sold, all right, into as bondmen, slave men, and slave women by ships. Okay. But with that, Lord willing, you was edified. I'm going to give all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Kakadash, double honors to the apostles of the great millstone, and blessings all you sincere laborers out there pushing this truth in all sincerity and faith and honesty.